Okay then, it's time for a transfer roundup. It's time to update our transfer list with all of the stuff that's been going on recently into this new year, 2021. And there's been some interesting things. We're going to get into this pretty quickly because we've got a bit to go through. Europe has been rather quiet. Quite majorly quiet. We're going to be taking a look at Korea, North America. First of all, let's start off with the others because we have a retirement. This is the Dutch DPS player Tap retiring. He, I believe, was part of the Boston Uprising Academy just before this. And again, it's not too much of a surprise if you fail at the contenders level, or you get ditched at the contenders level, and generally you can't find another team. Your destination is usually retirement. There's not too much you can do about that. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors, and hopefully maybe one day we will see him back in Overwatch. But let's move over to the EU now, where we have two moves. I told you it was a short one. First of all, this is the German support Orsi, who is leaving Ad Astra per Aspera and will be no longer assigned. I wish him all the best in finding a new team. And then we have the French tank player Crocs, who is leaving Angry Titans and will no longer be assigned. Again, a lot of these are outs, as is the general thing in contenders right now, because it is the off-season, because people are rejigging ahead of 2021. We are now in 2021. It is not that far from Open Division and Contenders Trials and the new season of Contenders. It's not that far away realistically, so teams are going to start to nail down rosters and things like that. We're going to be talking about T1 in a minute. So yeah, they're going to start nailing things down and preparing for their new Contenders voyages. Anyway, let's go to North America then, because why not? I don't know. Why not? North America then. British tank player Specs. He will be leaving Quara and will be no longer assigned. I wish him all the best. That's not Smex, it's Specs, in case you misheard me. Specs is in spectacles. Specs. Okay, American DPS player Wannabe is retiring. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors, and I hope he can pop off in whatever he's doing from here on in. Then we have the American coach Waddy, who is leaving our Zero and will no longer be assigned. I wish him all the best, and if he goes for another team, I wish him all the best in his new role, which he does. We'll be talking about that in a minute. King, who is an American DPS player, he will be leaving Square One, and I wish him all the best for the future. I'm sure he will find other things. I believe he was actually quite good at Square One, so it's a rather surprise him leaving. Then we have a move at Odyssey. This is N2S, the American DPS player. He's moving from Odyssey to a lone role with Northwood University. So that's an interesting one. Northwood University has to make a few signings. There's another one coming up in a minute. And this is going to be an interesting one for the collegiate tier 3 sort of scene. And I think it could be very interesting to see how they do. More moves at Odyssey though, because they're making a lot of moves. They're releasing their Mexican DPS Morsel, and then their American DPS player TR33 or Tree. They will no longer be assigned, and I wish them all the best in finding new teams. Then we move over to the Uprising Academy, who are letting go of their American DPS player Dynasty. He will no longer be assigned and be looking for another team. And now we circle all the way back around to Waddy, who we were talking about just now with our Zero. He's moving in to be head coach of Quara. So again, there are some ins coming in ahead of the new season, and it'll be interesting to see how Quara do. Not too much of a high-level contenders team, but they did stick around the place a bit. And they're obviously trying to improve ahead of this new season. But now we have another thing going on at Northwood University. This is them signing on a two-way, sort of two-way. It's kind of how contenders works. But Noble player, the American support player Fishcake, he's still with Noble, but he's on loan at Northwood University again. This Northwood University is going to do very well in whatever they're in because they're signing contenders level players. But I wish him all the best at Northwood, and I'm sure he will be back at Noble in no time, especially if he does well. And I'm sure N2S the same with Odyssey as well. Talking of Odyssey, we are going to circle back to 4 players leaving Odyssey. This is the American support player Rakatak. He will no longer be assigned. Wish him all the best for the future. We also see the American support player Luke Mino, the American tank player Rhino, and the American DPS player, yes, N2S, we were just talking about him, no longer assigned and leaving Odyssey. So N2S won't be going back to Odyssey after his time at Northwood, and I wish him all the best in finding a new team. Again, big changes at Odyssey, a team that was second in America Like, this is the team, yes, they got kind of pasted by Obey Alliance in the Atlantic Showdown for the second place teams, but still a team that is going through a major overhaul considering its decent performance in the NA contenders scene and in the gauntlet. So, rather surprising. Odyssey hasn't disbanded either, I did check. So, very odd. They might have some ideas in mind though, so we will remain to see what happens at Odyssey in the coming weeks. But now we move over to the Korean region, because this is where things get interesting. We're going to be talking a lot about T1. Now, T1 used to be the Fusion University, now is T1 competing in Korea instead of North America. Funnily enough, Philadelphia Fusion have now followed them. The irony is amazing. Anyway, we're starting off at Team Diamond. This is them letting go of the Korean tank Jasper. He will no longer be assigned, and I wish him all the best in finding a new team. Again, Team Diamond are making some changes, and they're going to lose another player in a minute. We'll talk about that in just a second. The WGS Phoenix assistant coach Dobie is also leaving, and will no longer be assigned. WGS Phoenix, will they be as powerful in the next Korean Contenders season as they were this season? Remember, they're Korean Contenders holders, and will they be as good? They've lost their assistant coach, they've lost their head coach, Laurie, to the Boston Uprising, and they've lost quite a few of their players. So, notably Aztec, who's now at the Toronto Defiant, notably on loan, he was I'm37, he's now at the Uprising as well. There are other players amongst this. So, WGS have lost a lot of players. Will they be able to replace them? Will they be able to replace the coaching staff that they had? There's a big rebuild to go on at WGS, and we will see if it works. But now we move over to T1, because the rest of this is about T1. So, they are letting go of their entire roster. This is the support Physics, the support Fixer, the tank Sven, the tank Ion, the DPS Tracker, and the other DPS Perfect. They're all Korean, obviously. They are all leaving T1. T1 did not have the season they expected. I am sure T1 expected to be above Talon Esports, who were coming into it from the Pacific, but Talon Esports just pulled off a massive feat, and actually did really well, being the 4th best team in Korea, I believe. 4th or 3rd. And pretty amazing. T1, that's where they want to be. They want to be competing with the Runaways, with the Gen.Gs, with the Element Mystics, or, well, what was Element Mystic, what is not Element Mystic anymore because they're not in the region. And obviously others like Owtru Blast and WGS. So T1 want to be there, and they are rebuilding their roster. So they've offloaded all of those players, and I wish them all the best in finding new teams. And now they are bringing in a bunch of new players. So, first of all, they are bringing in the Korean support player Unique from Team Diamond. Unique is a good player. I believe he used to be Element Mystic. And I expected him, there were rumours that he would be picked up by the Dallas Fuel to go with the Element Mystic boys that they now have. That didn't end up happening, but he's now at T1. Unique will be a good player for T1, I would have no doubt. He's a great support player, and I think he will pop off. Then we see 2 players coming in from Mosaic Gaming. This is 2 DPS players actually, so Kadalis and Zest. Mosaic Gaming seems to make a lot of waves. Even though they didn't do all that well, they seem to have a lot of players that either do very well in tryouts or have impressed coaches, because they are getting picked up. We've seen it in the Overwatch League as well. And T1 have decided to pick up these 2 DPS players. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. When I'm looking at it, I'm actually looking at the support line of this T1 team, which we will finish off in a minute, and it looks pretty good. The tank line may be okay. Not sure about the DPS. That remains to be seen. So let's talk about the other 4 players they brought in. All of these were previously unassigned, but you will notice, you will actually recognize some of these names. So, let's talk about the DPS. This is MN3 coming in. I wish him all the best at T1, and he will be competing with Zest and Kadalis as the 3 DPS players for T1 in this coming season. Then we have what I assume is main tank. This is Belarusa. Again, I wish him all the best coming into T1, and I'm sure he'll do well. But then we have 2 names that you will recognize. This is from London Spitfire of last year. So the off tank is Cleston, whichever way you want to say it. So he was the 2nd main tank for London Spitfire last year. He actually fell behind Bernard. Now Bernard is now at the Hangzhou Spark, obviously. Celestin wasn't as lucky because, well, he didn't get much playtime, didn't get to show off his skill. I still think he was a good off tank though. I think he was a good find for the London Spitfire, and unfortunately had to compete with a really good off tank. I think Bernard was actually punching well above his weight with London. Like, he could have punched well above his weight and gone to a better team than London, hence he's now at Hangzhou. Because I thought Bernard was one of the best players on London last year, and I can understand why Celestin kind of struggled to edge him out. And I think he will do very well for T1. I think it's a good pickup. I really, really do. And I think he's an off-tank they'll be able to rely on. In terms of his Sigma play, I'm not sure. Bernard was definitely the best Sigma on Spitfire last year. Diva, I think Celestin was actually really good on Diva, and I think Spitfire tended to sub Celestin in when they wanted a Diva, which is interesting. Very interesting. And then the second one is the support player. This is going to be your flex support, because this is going to be Krillin. So Krillin was actually the longest serving player on the Spitfire last year. Yeah, it seems odd to say that, doesn't it, considering he played about half a season. But Krillin was a big up-and-coming prospect for the Spitfire when they brought him in alongside the Gesture Squad, as he liked to call him, the OG Spitfire with Prophet, Gesture, Birdring, the likes. And he was this up-and-coming figure that I thought they were going to develop into a really nice flex support player. He then came in, stayed on with the new look Spitfire for Season 3, and didn't really play. I expected him to play a lot, but it was mainly Hailey that we got to see play. So Hailey was much more experienced than Krillin, quite obviously, because Hailey had time at the Soul Dynasty. But Krillin never really showed what he could at the Spitfire. Was never really given chance. I still think he has the potential to be a great player. And I think at T1 he'll be able to demonstrate this in the Korean Contenders region. And this is something I'm wondering. London Spitfire, and this is a note I'm going to leave this transfer roundup on. The London Spitfire assembled a 12-man roster last year. A substantial roster. And it was full of rookie new talent. And some of it, in my opinion, was actually quite good. Just wasn't utilised in the right way. Now, look at these players. They're now spreading across the esports spectrum. Glister, you've now got the San Francisco Shock. Well, that's quite understandable. Glister was one of the best players, if not the best player, on the Spitfire last year. You've got Krillin and Celestin. They're now at T1 in Korea, and I think they will do well at T1 in Korea. Given the right coaching, I think they could actually be fantastic. So it'll be very interesting to see how they work out. JMac has retired and is now coaching or head coach of Dark Mode NA, who have done very well in the current season, or the last season of the Gauntlet. And apparently, according to rumours, there are Overwatch League teams looking at JMac as a coach. It'll be interesting, considering he, in his retirement post, said that he couldn't improve himself. So he looked back at his VODs and couldn't work out why he wasn't improving. Interesting. I'm not going to lie, but we'll see. He must have been doing something right at Dark Mode. He was alongside Muma, by the way. So then we've got other people. Sanguinar. Sanguinar is the biggest question for me. You got Bernard, who's gone to the Hangzhou Spark. Like, yeah, we've already talked about that. Jihan, he competed in a tournament. He was with A-Bang, I believe, in the Gauntlet, who were representing the Pacific region. So he's had time back in competition. And then you've got Sanguinar. I thought Sanguinar was one of the biggest prospects that London actually found. They found it from the very, very deep depths of Gen.G. Like their academy of their academy of their academy of their academy. Or like Gen.B or Gen A or something like that. No one had ever heard of them. And he came in and I thought he was actually a really cool main support. And I thought he was a good main support. But no one's picked him up. I thought someone would pick him up. And I'm actually rather disappointed that no one has. I thought an Overwatch League team would do it. I would hope that a Korean team is going to do it. And if they don't, I would be really disappointed. So I really want Sanguinar to be picked up. And obviously Fuse deserves another chance. He had time at Fusion University. He was good there. There's a lot of potential. And I'd like to see some of these players picked up. And anyway, I've gone on a tangent. This is a roundup. This is a Transfer Roundup. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm going to leave it here for this one because it's been longer than expected. Thank you for bearing with me in this, and I have a cool video coming up soon with the Overwatch League because we're going to do power rankings. Let's go. It's about time. We have teams. They have rosters. It's about time we talked about them. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.